cheers to continuing to raise the bar.
Yes, raising
Voices,
money, voices, and
raising money, voices, and glass.
Coming up on this episode of Raise.
What is fundraising? Is it a profession? Is it a craft? Is it a trade? Is it things like that?
Yeah.
My argument is that's a similar kind of thing that got me into fundraising, was find the problem that others are trying to grapple with and deal with.
Mm-hmm.
The number of jobs that are still being advertised as competitive.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, right?
I mean, these are simple things. We're
Yeah.
thinking about inequality, and yet we're quite happy to say degree requirement and salary competitive.
Yeah.
Why? I have to find coping mechanisms to be in those kind of spaces because they're not natural homes for me.
Yeah.
Welcome to Raise. This is the podcast for fundraisers by fundraisers, and we're here to share insights and strategies and elevate our industry. It's so exciting to have you here tonight with us for this episode. I'm Christine Newbiser.
And I'm Sian Wilkinson-Iles, and we are joined by Damian Chapman.
Hello.
Hi. Do you want to introduce yourself before
course
we
I can.
dive in?
Yep, so fundraiser by day as Director of Income Generation at the Money Advice Trust. I'm also chair of the Regare fundraising think tank. And because I'm a glutton for punishment, I also volunteer with the Elisha Foundation. I'm now with the fundraising regulator. Yes, I'm poacher turned gamekeeper. Here it comes.
I just keep thinking we need to be really good, on best behavior.
Yeah, like our
Which
GPR
obviously
is
we would be
completely
anyway.
up
But
to
I was going to say I can go check the files after this podcast and just see how good you've been. But I'm also a trustee with the Chartered Institute of Fundraising, and I'm on the championing fundraising new subcommittee.
amazing.
Yeah.
So we're here today to talk about having an effective people strategy for your fundraising directorate, because it's one of those things that kind of gets overlooked, I think, a lot when we think about leadership in fundraising. It's one of those elements that I think can get subsumed into all the other elements of a fundraising strategy, and you don't really think about people in particular. And it's one of our most expensive, important resources and assets. So can you just elaborate a little bit on why you wanted to talk about this topic tonight?
Yeah. So for me, there's an interesting thing that's happening within the sector. We've been talking for a long time about how fundraising talent and fundraisers haven't been coming through, and staying around. But we don't seem to be looking to tackle the fundamental or underlying issues. And the conversation tends to get consumed and dominated by the larger organisations within the charity sector. We know that there's 5,000, 6,000 charities who are over 5 million a year. So the majority of the fundraisers are going to be in those kind of organisations. But they're not the only ones. There's 170,000 charities across England, Wales and Scotland, and I think there's another 10, 15,000 in Northern Ireland. We're 180,000 organisations, all of which are raising funds. And yet we don't think about how we're going to acquire, nurture, develop, cultivate, grow, retain fundraising within the fundraisers.
Yeah.
I talked at convention about how anybody can raise money. Anybody can do that. But actually deciding who to ask for what, when, how, and with what strategy, approach, and everything else that you need in order to be good at fundraising, that needs a fundraiser.
Yeah.
And most charities are undervaluing the fundraisers and also not investing in the right way.
Yeah.
I mean, you work at different organisations. How much time is spent developing your own fundraising people strategy, and how much of it is we've got an organisational people strategy?
Yeah.
And I don't think we recognise the nuance that needs to exist within fundraising people strategy enough. And we don't, as fundraisers, and I don't certainly, give enough credence and thought to how I'm going to develop that. And that's something that I'm really starting to put some effort and time into at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's so important because a lot of the times it gets, as I said, it just gets so subsumed into the wider organizational conversation. But also there's really a lack of what learning and development looks like in a fundraising directorate, why that's an important investment to make when you're thinking about your fundraising longer term and where you want to get to. And ultimately, how you are planning for the future, which is speaks so directly to why Sian and I wanted to start Raise to begin with. Like it literally feeds exactly into that line.
And it's so reactive as well. Like I think we think about our people strategy in fundraising when we're struggling to recruit or when we have gaps and or we've had a lot of people leave all in one go, and then we go, oh, I wonder why. Like I wonder what's going on there. But it's too late, right? Like that's too late to start thinking about your people strategy.
It really is. And there's too many organisations who rely on the brand strength of the organisation to go, fundraisers will come.
Yeah.
Who wouldn't want to work at insert name of charity name here?
Yeah.
Because they're passionate about it.
Because they're passionate about it.
Yeah.
But we burn through fundraisers that fast, we can't keep up.
Yeah.
And we're now at the stage where organisations are genuinely having to think, what is our culture going to be for the fundraisers? Because without them, everything else falls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we're starting to see, I think, a bit more of that organisational consideration, but nowhere near enough.
Yeah.
And it's not just in training and development for me. It starts right at the very beginning of what's the job description and the job advert you're putting out. What's your recruitment strategy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody in recruitment only last week, and they said the moment we're told in the brief, HR are managing this process end to end, we give up.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because HR will compete on price.
Yeah.
They're not competing on,
talent.
we want the talent.
Yeah. Or the potential for talent.
And the potential for it.
Right.
There's so many charities right now who are paying the apprenticeship levy, who are just not using it.
Yeah.
That's money that they're paying out as a larger employer, and they are not using it as free money to actually think about what their training and development talent is. What's our induction process?
Yes.
You must have gone through
my
one of
gosh.
the worst induction processes you've ever seen in your life, but I guarantee it's the same at every other organisation.
Always a train wreck.
I don't think I've ever done a good fundraising induction.
No.
I
I don't think I've even been able to reorganize one so that it's good when I've been in charge of it.
Yeah.
And I like it's embarrassing. I know it's crap.
and it's still crap. Yeah.
Like I know it's crap because it's crap for me and it's still crap for you. I'm so sorry.
Yes,
So-
I've been here 2 years and it's still exactly the same as it was when I came in and said
I
it's
whinged
awful.
about it for the first 6 months here, and then I just fell in line. So I think before we it's clear, it is clear there was a crap ton of this to unpick today. So before we dive in, so as you know, as part of Raise, we are raising money, voices, and glasses, and part of that is the camaraderie of grabbing a drink together, and this should feel like grabbing a drink down the pub. And so, what are we drinking today? What was your drink of choice?
So my drink of choice was a Sauvignon Blanc,
Woohoo!
because I'm that kind of classy wine drinker.
Yeah,
as long as it's chilled and comes in a frosted glass from
From
Saint
Liverpool
Michelle.
Street.
M&S finest.
M&S, because we switched studios and they
Yep.
didn't have wine glasses here.
This is not just a wine glass.
This is an M&S wine glass.
It's reusable. It's eco-friendly, guys. Okay.
I would just like to point out for public record, this podcast is not sponsored by, but it could be.
Yes. Exactly.
Yes, I love that. Get the sponsorship in, Damian.
Welcome to corporate fundraising.
Always a fundraiser. Always a fundraiser.
I was going to say, I'm public fundraising, so I'm like, donate the wine? Like, the ask is slightly different.
We want a strategic sponsorship here. Thank you very much. So cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Oh, you too far away.
That was
from
going to have
each
to be a
other.
virtual clink, I think, but it's
virtual
there in spirit.
Plastic clink.
I'm just excited we've done that bit so I can take a sip.
I know. I was like holding it. I'm like,
I was like, it's going to get warm.
we haven't cheersed.
Okay.
I just got so excited about the topic that I dove right in, and as soon as I did it, I was like, didn't do anything I said we were going to do at the beginning.
I think I was going to go with that. And actually, I feel like I'm going to jump ahead.
Yeah.
What you were going to talk about today, but because I think it fits in really well. We were talking about like anybody can fundraise, but there is a skill set, right? Like there's a really specific skill set that comes with being a cracking fundraiser out there. And there's something Christine used to say when we worked together, which was, everybody can have a responsibility for being involved in fundraising, but like not everybody's a fundraiser. And I think that's a really, really important distinction.
Yeah. I got asked in an interview once, which is probably one of my most favorite interview questions I've ever been asked, which is fundraising like a dark art? Is there a magic to it? Or is it a science?
And what was your answer?
My answer was that it was fundamentally a combination of both. It isn't just magic that happens, nor is it purely like coming from data, numbers on a page. It should work because it worked here, proven theory situation. You have to have intuition and nuance and gut and know your audience and who you're speaking to, because there's the people element to fundraising. Ultimately, you're trying to get people to feel a kinship to your cause and to feel connected to it and to then therefore want to give. And so it's neither and both at the same time. And the art there, or the skill of being a very good fundraiser, is knowing how to bring those two together at any point in time.
You properly just went into interview mode.
I did.
That was like a proper interview answer.
I was going to say, do you want me to crack out the actual score sheet and just put that on?
Yeah,
If
yeah.
you want to do one
5
as well,
out
we
of
can then submit them in for independent moderation. And
Yes, because that's what we should do with the fundraising regulator. Absolutely right.
Oh, it's an interesting question, though, because it's one that keeps coming up time and time again, and it ties to some of the work I've been doing and Regare's been doing about what is fundraising. Is it a profession? Is it a craft? Is it a trade? Is it things like that?
Yeah.
My argument is it is a profession because there should be a body of knowledge. There's a professional association, and there are things that you have to learn, understand, and be familiar and acquainted with in order to be able to do fundraising to the best it can possibly be. But part of that comes back to, and your point of following your gut. It's a phrase I don't particularly like because in order to follow your gut, you've got to have had certain levels of information, knowledge, comprehension, understanding, and evidence to be able to give you the I trust this. And whether it comes from fundraising body of knowledge or society, or it comes from organisational culture or organisational folklore, is irrespective, it's immaterial. But you need something to ground that in. And that comes back to what is good fundraising is when you've got a plan, you've got an approach, something that you are doing in a conscious way. And that's the role for me of what the fundraiser is there to do.
And then it kind of goes into the whole bit around having this professional body and training courses and what is the practice of good fundraising. And I think really when fundraisers are successful, it's because there's an understanding of the practice of good fundraising, and those things are followed and that's taught. And one of the things that I think is really powerful about CIOF is, and I know there's revisions and all of this that go on, but there are core competencies of what is expected as a fundraiser. And what isn't, I think, done in a lot of organizations is taking those core competencies and applying them to your directorate. And what are those core pieces of knowledge, and where are their gaps?
I will forever be appreciative of somebody I got to work with at my previous organisation. So I was at the Charity for Civil Servants for 5 years. And I got to work towards the end with a phenomenal HR professional who, she described it as the swoosh. But it actually had a name of the holistic performance management and people management process. But underlying it was this sense of there are competencies. And I got to explore through the civil service the competency model, because everything within the civil service has competency frameworks. And they work to, I think it's about 25, 26 professions that are recognised within the civil service. And that includes operational delivery, which is about 8% of the civil service headcount. But you've got the finance profession, you've got the property and estates profession, you've got the marketing profession, or communications as they call it. You've got all these different professions, including scientists. But each one of them has got a competency framework to be able to go, we need people to be able to do this, this, and this. And for you to be able to measure yourself, and for your manager to be able to measure you, and your peer group to measure you against those competencies, and go, there are gaps here, here, and here. Right. So now we're looking at our training to address the gaps in the competency framework that applies to your role of this, and this. It all of a sudden creates a framework to go, right, we want to do fundraising in this way. The CIOF's competency framework exists. I don't know of any organisation who's using it robustly top to bottom.
Well, we tried to at THC. we took it and turned it into a skills gap survey for people to self-evaluate where they felt like they fell on their core competencies.
Yeah.
And then use that to determine what the calendar of away days and training for the directorate were going to look like by identifying like where we had the greatest amount of like gap or not, and then worked with HR very closely to try to embed that then in our objectives and our annual reviews and stuff like that. So we got closest, I think, there, but it's really tough because it also requires the organization in your HR department and so many other areas to be willing to kind of to see the value in them and to integrate them.
Yeah.
And I think that is not so widely accepted.
I agree.
I was going to say as well, though, like, I think this is so important, but it's almost like the second step. And there's that first step, which we were talking about earlier, which is like recruitment and induction. Because I am such a big believer that there's bits that are easier to teach than others. And actually competencies, you can teach it, right? Like, you can absolutely move across from another sector. You can absolutely come in if you don't have any fundraising experience. If you've got passion and drive and you are great with people and you can make an ask, and like there is space in there that I'm like, I can then teach you the legal framework. I can teach you like what a good email looks like, but I can't teach you how to like really engage with an audience, or I can't. Does that make sense?
It does. And it's interesting, I won't name them because it's not fair, but I was talking to a senior fundraiser who's told me the story of a fundraiser within their team who needed to talk to a donor. And they asked them, have you spoken to them? I emailed them. Now, have you spoken to them?
Yeah.
I'll email them again. No, have you spoken to them? No. Why not?
Yeah.
Oh, because it's easier to email. So it might be easier for you.
Yeah.
But it's easier for the donor who has got a relationship and expects to be contacted about this in this way. Yeah. I think some of that comes back to organisational memory. We are not good. My hypothesis is we as fundraisers are not very good at archiving, storing and retaining organisational information to be useful for future fundraisers.
No, it's true.
And I don't know what the statistics are, but I had it quoted to me by someone in recruitment a bit ago that said the average tenure of fundraisers within individual giving has gotten so short now they're not actually seen through the life cycle of an IG campaign.
I like that's my area. Like that's 100%. I would say that's true.
So at that point, if your life cycle of fundraisers isn't even making it through the campaign they're working on, how on earth are we expecting people to pick up the baton and go, right, the hypothesis we were testing in this campaign was this. This is the body of knowledge, this is the evidence, this is the data set, this is the output, this is what we got as a result, this is the lessons learned that fed into and proved or disproved our theory. Use that to evolve and go forward. I'm not sure many of us would be able to go back 5 years in our campaigns and go, right, so what was in their head and what was in their thinking in order to generate the brief for that campaign to go out to market?
Or it's just the same thing that they've done every year over and over again. And when you go in, you're like, why are you doing it this way? And everyone's like, I don't know, we've just always done it this way. And that's been, it's one of those two things, right? Where it's like, well, because we didn't know what was in their head. So we just did it the same. Or it requires us to then, and we have wonderful, wonderful colleagues that are consultants. So this is not a dig at consultants when I say
do
this.
love consultants. But we also love
You do know you're going to have to put at least 3 or 4 consultants on this sofa anytime soon to make up for this. It's about to come, I can tell. Keep going, keep going.
But what it means because the attrition rate of fundraisers is so high, and it's true from a high value perspective as well, fundraisers in the high value space are leaving after a year, and in reality you need about 2 years to see at least true cycles of high value donors coming in, because it takes about 18 months to get a really good corporate partnership from so if you're leaving after a year, you're never seeing that totally through, and that then creates a dependency on bringing consultants in, or a perceived dependency on bringing consultants in to come up with like what is the next idea, what's the next type of campaign we should run, help us delve into this data because we don't really know where this data came from or what this story is telling us. And that then perpetuates a cycle where then people leave because there's something else to go to and to look at and all the things. All of that to say, like, I love consultants. I promise I do.
Yeah, we do love you.
We really do.
We think you're great. So, like, we've been pretty bleak, right? Like, fundraising's pretty hard at the moment. Recruitment's hard. Retaining staff is hard. Inductions are really difficult. We haven't got it cracked. Like, where do we start? So we want to create, like, a really effective people strategy. Where do we even begin?
I think the first thing has to be admitting there's a problem.
Yeah.
And I would challenge most fundraising, and specifically fundraising leaders, and I don't mean those with the head of or director in their title, I mean fundraising leadership,
Yeah.
to really question and ask ourselves, what have we got right, but what have we also got wrong? What should we be stop, start, continue?
Yeah.
Because I would say that until we get some of this right, we shouldn't start doing recruitment again. I think we should stop doing some of the really god-awful bad practice we've got. I mean, how many people genuinely believe that an exit interview report gets read, disseminated, and acted on?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be minimal.
We've got
like,
people
minimal.
telling us what's going wrong and what the issues are, and it gets turned
People don't
into
wanna hear
something with
it.
about 50 words that, oh yeah, so-and-so's left.
Yeah.
What was the exit report? Yeah, it was fine.
Yeah.
They've got a couple of this, a couple of that. Okay, move on.
Yeah.
We don't use the information intelligence, and yet we pride ourselves more often than not to say, oh yeah, we let the data do the speaking. We desire information and data to drive our decision making in fundraising.
Yeah.
And yet we don't listen to our recruitment practice and our intake. We don't review our exit interview process properly. We don't do, I would posit, meaningful staff pulse surveys more often than not, particularly within the fundraising space, because we're very good at either just ignoring it or we'll just tick the
Oh my gosh, or
the
the
box.
amount of times that I've seen results come back from surveys and people have been like, oh, you know, but that was 3 months ago now and it's probably changed. Or,
Yes.
you know, like, oh, so, or, you know, maybe like they were having a bad day. And then we try and like excuse poor survey results rather than being, there is a consistent issue here.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do?
And it comes back to, again, be honest about what our induction process is.
Yeah.
I think I managed to make one change at my last job around induction, and it was because I was doing a big change within the leadership team of the income generation. And it was during the pandemic, and it was just after the first lockdown had been lifted. Do you remember when we could do 2 metre distance, one-way traffic in the offices? We've probably all still got carpet stains of where the stickers were all
arrows
over.
were,
yeah.
absolutely.
Skip this test, you can sit at that desk.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah.
So I arranged for the new leadership team. So I got a mix of people who had been with the organisation for a while and some new people coming in.
Yeah.
And we did a week as an SLT doing a full immersion and experience and getting to know each other and understand each other and trying to make sense of what was happening in order to be able to go forward into deciding what was next.
Yeah.
And every person had their own desk. It was 3 meters apart, and we had every window open in September. It was already cold by that point, and we got the recycling air system on. But we spent 5 days in each other's presence and company, getting to know each other, doing full personality tests and discussing it and recognising.
Yeah.
And we used the free one. There was 16 personalities.
Yeah.
Rather than paying for one of the premium products.
That's like a Myers-Briggs.
Yeah.
It gives you a
Yeah.
Myers-Briggs, doesn't it?
it's
Yeah.
based
I
on
literally
that.
just did that with my leadership team.
What were you? Like, what's your...
Oh, so it wasn't the Myers-Briggs letters. It was
I just imagine we were really similar. That's the only reason I asked.
no, my Myers-Briggs letters are ESTJ.
So I switch between ESTJ and ISTJ.
Oh, interesting.
Oh,
'cause
so you're
I-
quite on the fence?
So I'm a noisy introvert.
Ah, I like that.
And it came from Catherine Miles,
Yes.
ex-Antinola and ex-Battersea.
Shani
She's
to
my
work with
director
Catherine.
of breast cancer now.
Ah,
I know Catherine.
so really, really phenomenal brain within the fundraising world.
Yeah.
I never got to work with her, but got to see her work, and then joined a couple of her networks and forums online. And the intelligence she gathers and gives
Yeah.
to the sector on a 2-3 times a year. But it was fascinating. But she once described herself in one of those as a noisy introvert.
Yeah.
And I went, yep, that's it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it
You're
is.
like, label, defined.
Yeah. You're
yeah.
on for work purposes.
Yeah.
I love, yeah,
But the moment it's my choice, my decision,
you're like,
Done.
full on introvert.
Yeah.
I find entering rooms where I don't know people the most intimidating and difficult and scary things to do.
does that still stand if you're
Yeah.
working? So it's still nerve-wracking if
Oh,
you're
yeah.
working, but you're just like, well, I'm working, so I need to get over it.
So what I tend to do is try and find 5 or 6 names of people that I know are going to be there
Yeah.
or likely be there in order to be able to find somebody to buddy
Your
up with.
anchors.
But I've reached out to them beforehand to go, I know you're going to this, I'll see you there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What time are you looking to arrive?
Yeah, yeah.
And I
So
basically
is
try
that
and
how
engineer.
you guys...
So Damian and I met a couple of years ago at the International Fundraising
I just wasn't sure if
Conference.
Damon hit you up beforehand. Or...
No.
No,
So
but I
Christine wasn't
didn't
on your
need
list.
to because I
Someone's
do.
really
I
noisy.
Because I am not an introvert in any way, shape, or form.
definitely not. No.
So I just go find people and I'm like, hello, hi, will you be my friend?
But again, that's a coping mechanism for me because I like to have a role and a purpose.
Yeah.
So IFC, I went in 2019 as my first one, session leader, volunteer.
Yeah.
And it's the volunteers who are in the room, supporting the speakers, looking after the delegates, making sure things are running, basically.
Yeah.
Purpose.
Yeah.
And I've volunteered every year since, doing something
Yeah.
different. So I'm there with a purpose. I've got something to do. I've got something to focus on. I happen to also meet people I know, people I don't know, and I've met some phenomenal people at IFC events. And then I've met some others.
Then you met me and you're like, oh darn, brought the level right down.
Yes. I have to find coping mechanisms to be in those kind of spaces
Yeah.
because they're not natural homes for me.
Yeah. And we assume they are for fundraisers
Well,
because I actually think way less fundraisers are extroverts than we think. I'm obviously a huge extrovert as well, so maybe this isn't a good sample, but
Which is atypical for individual giving.
I think because, well, I started in community.
Right, okay.
So I
Yeah.
It makes sense now.
Now we're on to the extrovert
Yeah,
spectrum.
yeah,
Got
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I started in community fundraising.
I do think there's an
So-
expectation of fundraisers to have a certain energy about them.
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
I started in trust fundraising and I love trust fundraising. I love it. You cannot tell me it's boring at
But
all.
you're an atypical trust
But I am an
fundraiser.
atypical trust fundraiser because because one of the things I really love about trust fundraising is figuring out what makes that donor tick. Like, how am I going to make this fit? And I went to a Bill Broody training course very early on in my career. I was a volunteer intern at the time. And he talked about how your project, whatever you're fundraising for, needs to be a jacket potato. And the project is a jacket potato, and whatever donor you're talking to, you just change the filling. So you change how you're pitching that project based on the trust that you're talking to. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you're still serving them a jacket potato.
Yeah.
It's the same product. You just need to understand what their tastes are. Which is kind of a weird thing too. But Bill does quirky things, like you become an animal and you find you align the trust that you're thinking about to the animal. And anyway, it's all about matching, basically. It's all about finding out what the audience wants and finding a way to make what you're doing match that. And so that's what I found like so cool about trust fundraising. It was like a puzzle to figure out. And so it really spoke to like this inquisitive side of me,
I love that.
even though I like am very loud.
But that's a similar kind of thing that got me into fundraising.
Oh,
was
yeah.
find the problem that others are trying to grapple with and deal with.
Yeah.
You're the solution to their problem. They don't.
Yeah.
So I come from a corporate fundraising and high value fundraising perspective. More often than not, they don't necessarily care about what you're doing until you make it relevant to them.
Yeah.
And the best wins I've ever had were where I was able to solve a problem they'd got.
Yeah.
Either a PR problem, a reputation problem, a market differentiator problem,
Yeah.
a strategic issue around employee engagement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have been and delivered and, for want of a better phrase, sold charity activity to go, you've got a people problem.
Yeah.
You've got a people retention problem because people don't enjoy working here.
Yeah.
I can give you that purpose through youth social action.
Yeah. Joy.
And away it went. And to the point where you could walk into some of the corporate partners that I'd got, and there was excitement, there was joy, there was hilarity, there was laughter coming from two of the meeting rooms.
Yeah.
There were employees of the company who were there in them. What they didn't see were the 30 colleagues who were actually stood outside looking in, trying to work out what was going on, and were asking, how do I do that?
Yeah.
We'd managed to solve the organisation's problem about creating energy and fun and excitement in the office through supporting youth social action.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's find the alignment, find the synergy, but find the point of differentiator and find the commonality.
Yeah.
This has really got me thinking about like why I got into fundraising. I was just that kid, right? Like I was that kid that, you know, when there was like swim 10 lengths and go around and ask everybody to like donate you £1. Like I was that kid. I just did them constantly. I loved it. And I think it's like my sense of winning. I just think I've got like a real sense of like winning and achievement. And
you really are a community fundraiser
yeah,
at heart,
but I
aren't you?
was that kid that like, you know, signed up for like the Christian Aid Week and was like there with, you know, used to take my little envelopes around. Like you used to get assigned streets, and I used to take my little envelopes around, and then I'd like not toddle. I was like 10. I knew how to walk.
I hope you had an adult with you.
Yeah, I did.
Really
Safeguarding. Yeah. But you know, and then I'd go back the next week and I'd collect all my, you know, and it was about how many envelopes I could get back, and like, you know, I was like in competition with myself, which is my favorite kind of competition.
Nice. Yeah.
I do like competition with myself. And I just like fell in love with it. Like, and I, you know, did Raising and Giving Society at uni. Like I went to Manchester University, and we had like a £500,000 a year rag. And I just can't imagine. We talked about this on our first episode. I can't imagine doing anything else. Like I feel like I was born to be a fundraiser. Like I feel like that's what I was always going to do. Like there was never another career really that I seriously considered. But it didn't I didn't have that like, oh, I like puzzle solving, or I just love fundraising. Like I love people. I love going out and like feeling really passionately about a cause and telling other people and bringing them on their journey with me. Like that's what I love.
So how do you get that spirit into an effective people
strategy? I was going to say, we've got a bit off track, haven't we?
But that's the kind of conversation. If you had an in conversation with your director, executive director, line manager, what got you into fundraising? All of a sudden you start finding out as the people manager.
Yes.
What makes you tick?
Yeah.
But that's so, and we don't do this
We
well.
don't.
No, we don't.
So
it's a perfunctory question in an interview. Tell me about yourself. And that, at best.
Well, then I have an existential crisis because they're like, what hobbies do you have? And you're like, I work.
I like wine.
I like wine.
But you raise a valid point, though. For my job, we do all sorts, and I've actually literally just written it on LinkedIn today. I've been with our Vulnerability Academy, which is something we run with UK Finance at the Money Advice Trust. But we had a session today on what makes somebody vulnerable, and we had conversations with people who describe themselves as being vulnerable for different reasons. And one of the participants described, you would probably say to somebody who walked into your office, "How are you today?"
Yeah.
And you're either one of those people and go, "Yeah, I'm fine, thanks, all good, thanks for asking." Or you're one of those people who go, that's now the thought I'm going to have that's going to consume my entire waking moment for the next 3 days, trying to work out how I actually am, that the rest of the next 2 days is going to be completely lost.
Right.
Yeah.
And yet within fundraising, there is that expectation. It's a bit like being extroverts. There is an expectation that you're going to be thinking in a particular way based on the area of fundraising you're in, which means that you're going to operate, think, act, do, feel in a certain way.
Yeah.
We don't recognise, I think, enough of the nuance and individuality within individual fundraisers, enough within our people strategy, people program, or even the way we organise things.
Yeah.
I had a massive faux pas with my organisation this week, and it's still playing on my mind. One of my colleagues was asked to join us at the office in Birmingham. They don't live anywhere near Birmingham for a 9 o'clock start. Hadn't clocked and twigged that there was actually caring responsibilities and needs that would actually impact that decision to do. So we moved it to 10 o'clock. But they had to specifically ask if we could do that, because I'm not going to be able to do that. My brain inside went, we'll just get them a hotel room for the night before, so that they're able to be fresh and everything like that, and then travel, and we'll deal with toil afterwards. It took me a moment to key in and go, that's not why they're asking.
Yeah.
And it took me that bit longer, and I'm still thinking about what I should have done, how I could have done, what could have been different. But is it because somebody didn't feel that they could disclose it to me? Is it a failure on me for not having thought about it in the first place? Is it something that we've just not thought about when we're consciously designing how we're going to work and operate together as a group? These are the kind of things that I think don't get explored enough when we're thinking about fundraising strategy and people strategy to deliver the fundraising strategy.
Yeah. I think there's just one thread I really want, because that's so important. It is so important. And I have so many conversations with people who are like, my manager just doesn't get me, or like they're not meeting me where I'm at. And I'm like a really big advocate for relationships within like that work environment. They're a two-way street. You know, you are creating a relationship together between the two of you. You and your line manager, like, you know, you're saying like, how do we create a really great space for us to work together? But my commitment to my team always is, I really want your feedback. I really want your honest feedback. I want us to work together. I want us to have a great working relationship. But within that, I'm going to work really hard with your advice and input to create psychological safety for you to be able to do that.
That's good.
Because we just don't. We're like, oh, well, you know, we asked for feedback, and, you know, well, I mentioned at the end of a rushed one-to-one, like, oh, have you got anything else you want to say? And they didn't say anything, so therefore everything's fine.
Yeah.
And actually it's not, because we haven't created that psychological safety for those people to come to us, because we don't hear them. But it's more than that. Like, I, on principle, do not cancel one-to-ones with my team. You don't want the time, that's fine. That comes from you. Like, I will never cancel your one-to-one for anything, because I never want you to hear that you're not priority. I never want you to hear that something else in my life is more important than you, like an SLT meeting or nothing. Like, you know, I'm here to work with you, so therefore I'm creating and owning this time with you. And I think it's that kind of stuff that's really, really important, that you show up for your team as well. That you show up, you advocate for them. For me, like, the relationships that I've had with line managers that have been the most tricky have been when I fundamentally don't feel like they have my back. Yeah. When I'm like, I need to know that you have my back. It doesn't mean you need to agree with me all the time. It doesn't mean that you need to never challenge me or anything like that. But I need to know that when I'm not there, you've got my back.
Yeah. But you've had to create that structure.
Yes.
It isn't one that your organisation has gone, we believe that this matters. Yeah. We believe that this is the kind of structure that should exist within the whole organisation or within fundraising. It doesn't go within that. We're having to create pockets, it feels, to tackle the things that we believe are essential in this, and not necessarily getting the support that we need.
Yeah. And you learn by having crappy line managers.
Yes.
Like, often, you do.
Often that is how we learn.
Like, the best line managers that I know have come from having had really crappy line managers themselves and being like, I never want to be like that. Yeah. That made me feel really, really crummy. Yeah. I never want somebody who I line manage to feel like that.
But
sad, isn't it?
But it is sad.
It is sad.
Why should it?
But part of it too is creating that psychological safety, creating that space. But it's a relationship, it's a two-way street. As you said, there's a reciprocity there, which means there's also an accountability there. Yeah. So I will create the space. I will create the psychological, you can be whoever you, like, we can talk about whatever you want to talk about. We can go through all of this. You know, it's your one-to-one. There might be things that I need to bring up too, but also in doing that, there's an accountability on both. There has to be an accountability on both sides. So it's not just you give everything as a line manager and create this warm, loving cocoon. It's not a kumbaya space, ultimately, because there has to be reciprocity. There has to be that relationship. And I think as the line manager or as the leader, not even line manager, just as a leader, you have to go the extra mile, and you have to create that to begin with, and you have to ask the right questions. But it's also incumbent on the person who you are line managing to meet you in that space too.
But I think that comes from a really good first, and like, again, we've touched on this before on the podcast, but like, I think that first one-to-one is fundamental. I think it is make or break that first one-to-one. And like, yes, of course you can get it back 100%, but making somebody feel really good in that first one-to-one, like really setting out those boundaries of how do we work well together. And something I see a lot of line managers do is make assumptions or think, I'm a line manager, so therefore I should know. Ask about what, like, when's like a time you've been managed by someone really well? Like, when have you felt really valued at work? How do we create that space for you? How do you best receive feedback? Like, when's the best time of day to get you? Like, when do you want to do our one-to-ones? Because actually, you know, you work best in the morning after you've dropped the kids off at school and you've got a bit of headspace. Like, great, let's do that. You know, we can flex in that space. We can create one-to-ones that work really well for you. Like, we need to ask as well. And I think that's always coming back to what you were saying right at the beginning about exit interviews. We ask at exit interviews questions that we should be asking at induction.
Good point. It is. And I think there's an awful lot that we don't give enough headspace to, or time space to, or priority to. And I think it goes all the way through the people cycle.
Yeah.
We're still seeing jobs that are advertised with degree requirements, and I don't know why, because you can't do a degree in fundraising, except in some very limited circumstances and organisations. So why are we asking for a degree in it?
Yeah, I've got a philosophy degree. I can tell you right now, it's not like helping community fundraising. like you know, those two things are very different. But yeah, I agree.
So we do that. We do the number of jobs that are still being advertised as competitive.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, right?
I mean, these are simple things. We're thinking about inequality, and yet we're quite happy to say degree requirement and salary competitive.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Let's just sort those things out. The sector is still predominantly white female fundraisers led by white male fundraisers.
From privileged backgrounds normally as well.
Yeah, 100%.
And there aren't enough of us who are gender atypical or have got other protected characteristics. So I'm a disabled gay, also I'm a non-conformist gender as well, man who's come from a working class background. I've not yet met another fundraiser who meets all four of those protected characteristics, but I shouldn't have to be seeking them out in order to go, oh, you're my tribe. No, that's not it. What we don't have is enough diversity within our fundraising profession. We need to find ways to bring more men into the profession, but we also need to find ways to actually tackle the inequality that exists within our fundraising practice. That's only going to happen if we start actively and consciously doing something about it.
It has to be, it cannot be a passive thing.
No.
It will not happen. Things only happen when you put goals against them, when you set targets and I don't mean it in like a hard target way, but like you have to consciously be doing something.
And I think you have to be conscious of your privilege in that space as well. I agree.
There are jobs I've not applied for that I would have gone, I think that would be a blooming awesome job, because I can't take the certainty of salary competitive as to whether it's one that I could actually work with.
But I said, like, is it worth my time? Like, is this a 30k job a year or 60k job a year? And actually, I'm going to give you 5 hours of my time writing a job application. I need to know it's worth it.
We need to also learn from other sectors. So the finance and the insurance sectors are remarkably good at retaining the talent that they need because they don't force promotion to get salary increases. We are promoting fundraisers who are not good managers, who are not good leaders, but are blinking awesome fundraisers.
Because we assume if you are a good fundraiser, you will therefore be a good line manager, and those two things do not necessarily.
Those are two different skill sets.
It took me we talked about like the fact we're going to own mistakes. Like, I look back on my first team management job and I cringe. I like inwardly cringe at how crap a manager I was right at the beginning of my career, and I've still got so much to learn. I've still got so much like, I just don't think you're ever done learning as a line manager. But I was particularly bad right at the beginning of my career, and I can, like, it's to the stage where you're like, occasionally I think, should I reach out to those people and go and apologise?
I think this might be the sofa of shame. I mean, Christine sat there I was brilliant.
Well, the thing is, Christine,
awesome.
No, that's not.
I can attest that Christine is a cracking manager. So like,
thanks, I pay you for that.
You said put that in my bank account later.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do, like, I look back and I cringe. And actually, the one big thing that I really flip and hope everybody took away from that situation is exactly what I said a few minutes ago, which is I hope all of them thought Sian was so shit. I never want to be like her. But like, nobody ever really taught me how to be a good line manager. And you know, I was 26. I was line managing like a team of 10 people. I had only really been in the sector for a few years. I just didn't really have enough support in that space. And I did then get it because I think everyone was like, Sian definitely needs some help. And I got some really, really great support and some really great coaching and training. And I did get better. But like, gosh, my poor team for that first 6 months. Like, I really feel for them.
But we don't teach how to be a good manager often enough. And we don't teach how to be a good leader often enough.
No. Or we said, well, like, here's the engagement ladder.
Yeah.
And you're like, this doesn't help.
No. We teach people how to fundraise.
Yes.
But fundraising, in the way that it's done, certainly in the UK, and I would say probably most of the global north, is done. Fundraisers are managed by a senior fundraiser who is managed by a executive fundraiser.
Yeah.
But we don't teach how to be a senior fundraiser, and we don't teach well enough how to be an executive fundraiser.
No.
So you end up with the real jeopardy that we actually put the entire fortune of and destiny of a non-profit in the hands of an incompetent executive fundraiser who can completely destroy the culture, value, ethos and ambition of an entire fundraising program in as little as 6 months.
And the thing is too, like, I think as when you get up to the point where you're being where you're like a head of fundraising or a director, often your job is not to be the highest fundraiser in the organization. Your job is to oversee the fundraising that is happening and enable your team or empower your team to be the top
best they
performing fundraisers. Your director in each of their areas, it is literally to direct, not to be the star fundraiser. Yeah. And those are not the same thing.
But they're also not the same skill set.
No, they're not. Exactly. They're not the same skill set. And it's really important distinction that we need to make.
I want to say one more thing and then I promise we'll wrap because I'm conscious of time.
Okay.
And also, Damian, I feel like I've spoken loads. I don't know how much we've given you airtime.
I think I've talked far too much.
Okay, that means
this is a reciprocal circle of people who don't think they've talked enough. So
we love it.
I'm
That's
quite happy
great.
to come back another time and we can explore more.
You gave us 2 other topics, and
we definitely.
Plan on
I think you need to find
that.
other people who are much better qualified on talking about all of it and this one. But.
I was going to say that I think just kind of picking up what Christine said, like I was talking to one of my team earlier today and I kind of said, they were like, oh, you know, I feel like I'm taking up too much of your time. And I was like, never. Like, absolutely never. Like, if line management takes up 90% of my time, so be it.
Yeah.
Like,
What
that
else have
is
you got
my,
to do?
exactly, that is my job as a leader, is to support my team.
Yeah.
Like, and even if you were just really cynically looking at this, they're my biggest cost.
Mm-hmm.
So why would I not put the biggest amount of my time into them?
We are people-powered organisations.
Yes.
Delivering societal benefit for people and other entities, including animals and all this kind of stuff that goes within it. But ultimately, it boils down to we're people leading people.
Yeah.
So why on earth wouldn't we invest in our people? Why wouldn't we seek to find the best way to bring people into our organisation to understand it?
Yeah.
Yes.
I love the fact that we give people the expectation and impression of freedom and autonomy, but then don't give them the tools, knowledge and information to equip them to be able to do their job to the best of their ability.
Exactly. We're just like, here you go do it.
Yeah.
But that's awful. That's an awful thing to do, because it's just like, go jump. There might be a bungee cord. Not really sure. You probably won't die.
Yeah. Go talk to people. Go talk and find out the information.
Yeah.
It's all on the intranet. I love that phrase. It's all on the internet. I was once told by a communicator within...
a communicator.
Yes. I will keep them completely anonymous on this one.
I've just got that popular song in her head now.
But they said the intranet is where content goes to die.
Yeah.
If you don't want anybody to read it, put it on the intranet. If you want to bury it, but it's there for legal compliance, put it on the intranet. If you want to make sure that somebody can start an organisation and sort of find their way through, bury it on the intranet, but put a little comment, a snarky comment underneath it that goes, this will never be read, but I have spent the last 6 months producing it.
That's amazing.
Nice.
I've done that in my last 2 organisations. I've not had a single read on one of them before I left, and that was 3 years.
So if you wanted to leave everybody listening to this podcast with like one kind of final bit of advice, you're like, from everything you've said today, or haven't even said because we've told you way too much about our lives, what?
Thank you for the therapy.
Yeah, thanks for the therapy sesh. What would you want people to hear? Like, what's that one bit of advice you want them to take away with them?
I think it probably goes to something that we've all said in one way or another today, which is we came into organisations, whether it's our current one or previous ones, and went, this has been awful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There's been problems in the recruitment process, there's been problems in the onboarding process, there's been problems in the objective setting for the first 6 months process. I've not felt proper immersed in my organisation to be able to do my job to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
Take that first day reflection that you had of your own organisation and apply it back to what is currently going on, and then give yourself a New Year's resolution. Actually go back and critically analyse your recruitment and induction and onboarding approach in your organisation, in your team. Don't think about the rest of the organisation, just think within your team or within your directorate if you happen to be at director level, and commit yourself to doing at least one thing differently and commit to it.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that needs to be done and reflected in a fundraising people strategy
Yeah.
that it starts to get too daunting. Fix one thing. Fix how people come into the organisation and really, really think about how you're going to design that and redesign it to be the best it can possibly be.
Yeah.
Love it.
I think that's so important.
Yeah, me too. Amazing.
Thank you, Damian, so much.
Thank
for
you.
sharing
So much.
all
This
of
has
your
been
Great.
great. And Sauvignon Blanc's my favourite wine, so topic.
I gotta say on a personal note, I love that we met at IFC a couple years ago, like in the most random town in all of Holland, and then now you're here sitting with us, and it's just it's so great for like building these connections and being able to like have these moments. So
I can't believe we haven't ever gossiped properly.
What, you and me?
You and me.
I know.
I mean,
I think we might need to fix that moving forward.
Yes, this could become a regular fixture, but
I think we should just remove...
with slightly fewer lighting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really
It's been
good.
good.
Thank you so
Amazing.
much.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you've really enjoyed the episode. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. It really helps us reach even more fundraisers out in the sector. You can find us at our website, which is thisisraise.co.uk, and you can find us on Instagram at raisecharitypod. Thank you so much for joining us, and cheers to continuing to raise the bar.
Yes, raising voices,
Voices in glass.
money voices in raising money voices in glass.
There's not going to be a clean take of that. Right, one more time. Okay.
Oh my god.
So here's to raising money, voices, and glasses. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.
Got there.
Bye.
Yay.
Oh.